Howdy readers, I'm Jason. This is Chapter and Verse if you're new to the channel. And tonight I'm going to be doing a tag that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. I've had it planned out, my answers, everything for weeks and weeks now. And it was about time I got to it. So this is the Scholar's Book Tag. And it was created by Josh over at Literary Gladiators. And I will link to the original tag video in the description box below this video. So, alright, without further ado, let's get through this. Because the last question in particular, I just love the hell out of. So, number one. Which lesser-known writer do you feel more people need to read and study? That's pretty easy for me. So I've talked about him before on this channel, but I have never held up this book of his. But that would be Tom Drury. Okay, this is Hunts and Dreams. I've read two of his novels, this one and The Driftless Area. And The Driftless Area it's just absolutely magnificent. I mean, this is a really great book too. But The Driftless Area is unlike anything else I've ever read. It's really kind of in its own category, in its own world, actually. And Drury, like I've said before on this channel, in my opinion, is the greatest writer of contemporary dialogue that I've come across. And I think that much of the genius and much of the brilliance of his novels actually rests on the shoulders of his dialogue. He's so good at it. His characters just spring to life through the words that they speak. So, all right, number two. Which well-known writer do you feel garners too much attention? That's easy as well. I don't have one of his books here because I can't stand him. I've only read one of his books, but yeah, I've talked to so many people who just love that novel, and I think it's just absolute garbage. It is pretentious, pedantic trash. And that would be Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. If ever there was an overrated literary novelist, it is Murakami. I don't know how his nonfiction is, but that novel is it's just a joke. I mean, it's eye-rollingly bad. Number three, a writer or work you believe will be in the canon by 2050. And that's easy for me as well. And this one goes out to Steve Donahue and everyone else out there who they're just not on the wavelength. But that would be The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which I've held up on this channel many times. Yeah, it's just a tremendous book. You know, I've read it once. I've read it one time, and that was. God, I mean, it was right around the time it was published. So it was about 12 years ago. I feel like I remember the book as well as if I read it a month ago. I mean, it just kind of engraved itself in my memory. So it's brilliant. I think it's important. I think it's poignant. I think it's tragic. I think it's a kind of doomsday warning. I think this is definitely going to be a book that's read in 2050, and it's going to be studied in 2050. And I think it'll be around for 100 years, 200 years, provided human beings are around at that time to study novels. Number four, a writer from your area, state, or country that you believe deserves more recognition. So here's a Wyoming-based writer. I think she still lives in Wyoming. And this is one of her early books, and I think it may have been it was her first or second book about Wyoming. But this is a work of nonfiction. This is a book that you, Lukash, have to read. And this is The Solace of Open Spaces by Gretel Ehrlich. And it's gorgeous. I mean, you can flip anywhere in this book. You can flip to anything. And you will find just beautiful, beautiful prose, right? So page 42, let's see, 1978 turned out to be the third worst Wyoming winter on record. After an extreme of 60 below zero, the thermometer rose to 10 below, and the air felt balmy. One cowboy lit a fire under his pickup to thaw out the antifreeze, then drove over the Continental Divide wrapped in horse blankets because his heater fan had snapped and he had 120 horses to feed in the valley below. And the book is just filled with prose like that. Yeah, I've never read the whole thing. I've only read kind of sections of it. It's really kind of a collection of essays, is what it feels like. But I've taught some of those, and it's just wonderful. It's a book that I still don't own, but I anticipate buying soon. Number 5, a deceased writer you felt should have won the Nobel Prize in Literature. All right, so the easy answer, the obvious answer to this is Philip Roth. But that's not where I'm going to go. I think that he definitely deserved it, but I'm going to go with a writer who was kind of less frequently in the conversation. And that would be William Trevor. If you haven't read anything from William Trevor, he was best known for his short stories. This is a slim novel of his that's just gorgeous. You want to talk about a sad freaking book. That would be this. But my favorite short story of his is called Folie à Deux. That short story is, it's one of the saddest things I've ever read. Like, there's a scene in that, and you'll know what scene I'm talking about, right? Oh my God, like you can hear it. Like you can't, it's not just that you can imagine it, but you can actually hear what's happening in that scene. And it's so deeply sad. It's almost nightmarish, actually. But William Trevor absolutely deserved to win the Nobel Prize. So, yeah, read him if you haven't yet. Number 6, a living writer you feel should win the Nobel Prize in Literature. And that would be Australia's Tim Winton. I've read 4 of his books now, including the one that I'm reading, which is a collection of short stories. It's upstairs. But this is his novel Breath, which is a fabulous coming-of-age story about 2 young kids who are learning how to surf. And, how they look to kind of push the envelope in very dangerous ways in their lives. Not just with surfing, but with various other things as well. It was made into a film, which came out this year, directed by, I think it's Simon Baker. He played the mentalist, I think, on television. Got very, very good reviews, but it's a great, great book. His best book that I've read is Cloud Street. So, if you haven't read Tim Winton, do. Number 7, a writer you feel needs a complete anthology of their work. And that would be the poet William Stafford. So this is The Way It Is, New and Selected Poems. This was published way back when. I think I was still an undergraduate when this came out. But I don't think he's ever had a complete poetry collection. And he deserves it. Whether it just should be brought up by Library of America in a couple of volumes or what have you. But William Stafford is, to my mind, probably the most important poet, most important American poet of the last half of the 20th century. The poems are simple in the way that Robert Frost's poems were simple, and they are mysterious and profound in the way that Frost's poems were mysterious and profound. So, number 8, translated work you feel deserves recognition. And that, again, this was on my BookTube Top 10s tag. That would be Kristin Lavransdatter by Sigrid Undset. And it needs to be this translation. Okay, this translation was done by Tina Nunnally. And here, I'll get in close so you can see the names. But, yeah, we're coming up on winter. This is the best winter read I have ever read. I drank a lot of mead when I read this. I ate a lot of beef stew and like big hunks of bread that I would just kind of tear up. It rearranges the furniture in your brain in such a way that you want to put yourself in the world as much as possible. And so I read a lot by candlelight and I drank mead. The book slows you down in a really beautiful and I think a really important way. So, Kristin Lavransdatter. Number 9, a work of nonfiction you feel needs to be studied. And that would be a book that I've taught. And this is Finding Beauty in a Broken World by Terry Tempest Williams. I think the title kind of says it all. This book is more timely and more urgent, I think, than it's ever been. So have a look for it. And the last question, if you could teach any 5 literature-based classes, whether they exist in some form or you create them, what would they be? And as a former college English teacher, this was so much fun to imagine. And my 5 classes would be the following. The first class would be called The Darkness Around Us is Deep, Contemplative Poetry from Dickinson to Stafford. The second class would be called In Memoriam, Mortality in Literature and Film. Third class would be called The Christian Sublime, Terrence Malick, Marilyn Robinson, and Christian Wyman. Fourth class would be What Fools These Mortals Be, Fairy Tales and Commerce. And the fifth class would be Mercy Street by Candlelight, Survival and Suffering in Sexton and Plath. Now, if I can figure out how to attach a document in the description box below, I will put together a Word document of my required and suggested reading for each of these imaginary classes, because that's just kind of the dork that I am. And then lastly, who do you tag? So there are a lot of people whose answers to this I would love to know, but I'm going to tag Justin at Ghost Reader, Anna at Anna Babbling Book, Matt at MCS-books, and Curtis at Curtis Books and Books. So that was the Scholars book tag. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed thinking about these answers. And apart from those 4 booktubers, if you're keen on doing this tag as well, the prompts, the questions will be in the box below, and do it. Feel free. I had a ton of fun thinking of these answers. So I will see y'all later in the week. I'm going to film my summer wrap-up on Thursday, I believe, and then my Midsummer Night's Dream video on Saturday. So until then, adios.